Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Bolaji, and today we are diving into a revolutionary topic that could redefine your financial freedom. Why you, as a Nigerian or someone living in a developing nation, needs Bitcoin and gold in your portfolio. If you like this content, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Now, back to the business of today. If you are living in Nigeria, you've probably, and maybe I shouldn't use the word probably, you have definitely felt the challenges of an unstable economy, inflation, and restrictive financial systems. You've watched, for example, a crate of egg go from 1,000 naira in 2021 to about 7,000 naira today, and that's just within the last 3 years. What you're seeing is a screenshot of the breakdown of prices before the current president of Nigeria, who is just like 18 months into office, and is the price before him after he assumed office. Mind you, inflation has actually been raising its ugly head before this current administration. So I'm sure the most of the prices here are outdated. Now, every important thing has skyrocketed in price except salaries. Right. Well, what if there is a way for you to take control of your money and secure your future? What if you can stop another entity from stealing your purchasing power? That is what gold and Bitcoin in your portfolio offers. So let's explore these two assets in detail. All right. The first reason to hold gold and Bitcoin is that Naira is not scarce. And let me say that again. Naira is not scarce. You just don't have it. All right. The word scarce implies that it is limited in supply, but Naira is not. The constitution does not in any way put a limit to how much CBN and commercial banks can print and lend to the government. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. Together, we are going to look at some charts and data to see what has been happening to the money supply. All right, let's look at these charts together. This is the chart of money supply M3 in Nigeria, and the source is Central Bank of Nigeria. I'm showing you from Trading Economics websites. I'm going to leave the link to this information in the description of this video. Now, what you will notice in this chart, from 2010, the money supply M3 in circulation has been growing exponentially. In fact, I can show you from another website that dates back to year 2000. Again, it's been showing the trend is clear, exponential growth. It's currently 109 trillion naira as at September this year. If you come here too, this confirms it, 109 trillion naira. All right. So what is M3 money supply? It basically measures the liquidity in the system. So it includes your cash, the money, the physical cash in circulation, the deposits, the money in fixed deposits, the money in savings and current accounts, the monies in debt instruments that have less than 2 years maturity dates, and everything like that. So if you want to understand the liquidity in the system, M3 tells it all. Now, I want you to look at what happened after COVID. The graph actually accelerated. After COVID, by 2020, we had 34 trillion naira in circulation. And by September 2024, that's within 4.5 years, the money in circulation has become 109 trillion naira. That is 200% increment. So you basically tripled the money in circulation. And this is in an economy in which the goods and services in circulation the productivity of the economy has has remained relatively the same. So when you have that, what you have is more money chasing fewer goods. And basic economics tells you you're going to have inflation. And that explains the inflation in Nigeria. The official figure for inflation in Nigeria is currently 34.6%. Because the money supply in Nigeria has been growing, it shows that Naira is not scarce. So the next question you would ask me is, who has been getting this new money and who is actually printing the new money into circulation? And for that, I'm going to show you this headline. This is from Premium Times, and I'm sure you hear this. You heard about this a couple of months ago, earlier this year, when Senate probes 30 trillion naira ways and means obtained by Buhari administration from CBN. To be fair, 23 about 23 trillion naira was obtained by Buhari. The remaining 7 trillion naira was obtained by Tinubu from the CBN. Now, CBN is the only entity in Nigeria empowered by the constitution to print and manage the money supply. CBN does not do any business. The only way they get money is to print it. So now, the constitution allows them, through ways and means, to borrow money from CBN. It allows Nigerian government to borrow money from CBN, provided that they can repay it within a short period of time. Now, this is meant to be an emergency fund. If the revenue of the government dropped, then they can access this facility. Now don't forget that this 30 trillion naira is just money created out of thin air that appears or is credited to the bank account of Nigeria government, and it appears as loan on the CBN balance sheet. So the money was actually not taken from anybody, but it came from thin air. Now, if I give you a loan, let's say I lend you 1,000 naira, for example, 1,000 naira is taken from me and given to you. So if I had 2,000 naira before I give you 1,000 naira, then what I have left is 1,000 naira. I can only spend what I have left, which is 1,000 naira. Then you can spend the 1,000 naira I've just given to you. So there is actually a transfer of purchasing power. But in the case of the CBN and Nigeria government, through ways and means, the 30 trillion naira was not taken from anybody. So there's no transfer of purchasing power. It just comes out of thin air and it appears in the bank account of the government and they spend it into circulation. That's why the M3, the money in circulation, also grew because of that. If there is actually a transfer of purchasing power from someone to the government, then the money supply would not have grown. Now, and if Nigeria government pay back within the stipulated period, what will happen is that the CBN will collect the money and it ceases to exist. They will just delete the loan off their balance sheet and the money just disappears from circulation. But unfortunately, Buhari government could not pay back the 23 trillion naira they borrowed. This is the headline about 2 years ago on Nairametrics, and it says Senate approved securitization of 22.7 trillion naira ways and means loan from CBN. So this was towards the end of Buhari's administration, and they securitized the ways and means for him. I'm going to explain what securitization means. The terms of the securitization of ways and means advances are gazetted by the DMO. As gazetted by the DMO, involve the issuance of debt security for a 40-year tenure by the federal government to the CBN, with an interest rate of 9% and a 3-year moratorium on principal repayment. So what that means is that instead of Nigeria government to pay back within short period of time, they now issue I owe you to CBN. That the 23 trillion naira I'm owing you, I will pay you back after 40 years, like bond. Now, until that 40 years, I'll be paying you 9% interest on the capital. And at the end of 40 years, the 30 trillion naira will be, the 22.7 trillion naira will be paid. Now, That means that money remains in circulation. Let's see what happened in the case of Tinubu for the remaining 7 trillion naira. Senate approved securitization of 7 trillion naira ways and means request by President Tinubu. This was December 31st, 2023. This was the headline is on ProShare. So here too, Tinubu did the same thing, securitized the money he borrowed, or should I say printed into circulation. So the major source, one of the major source of new money coming into circulation is CBN through ways and means. Then we are going to, now, before we look at the second entity that has been printing money into circulation, you might actually say that it is not only Nigeria that is printing its currency, that is expanding money in circulation. And you're right. In fact, USA printed about 20% to 25% of their GDP into circulation between 2020 and 2021. That's as a response to COVID. And what happened after was inflation. In fact, the inflation rate in US reached about 9%, which was the highest in the last 40 years. Now, the inflation rate before COVID was less than 2% in the United States. Now, the equivalent of central bank in Nigeria is called Fed in USA. They had to raise interest rates to about 5%, and they started selling assets from their balance sheet to reduce the money supply and to fight inflation. Now, because they were able to get the money supply under control, it worked. And currently, the inflation rate in US is about 2.5%. Now, it wasn't USA that only USA that did that. UK also did the same thing, EU, Canada, and many other countries. And the same thing happened. They had multi-decade high inflation rates, and they all had to increase their interest rates to combat inflation. Now, similarly, and to be fair to Central Bank of Nigeria, they've stopped since early this year. They've stopped giving out money to the government through ways and means, and said they aggressively raised interest rates from 18.5% to about 27.5% currently. You'll notice from these charts that we are looking at, the charts of M3 money supply in the last 1 year, instead of reducing, because again, the way to manage or reduce the money in circulation is to raise interest rates. When you raise interest rates, those who have borrowed loan, it becomes expensive, too expensive for them to keep servicing the loan. And in some cases, some will pay off the debt and the money in circulation reduces. Now, I'm going to explain how issuing loan through the commercial banks expands the money supply. No, so unfortunately, in the case of Nigeria, the money supply has only increased even when the interest rate is about 30%. Now, I want you to look at this. Now, this is the headline on Business Day. It was on the 31st of October, and it says credit to government jumps 90% as CBN struggles to curb liquidity. Now, I want us to read this together. Banks' credit to the government, that's commercial bank credit to the government, surged to a record 42 trillion naira in September 2024 amid growing money supply M3. According to the data from the central bank, credit to the government rose by almost 90% year on year to reach 42 trillion naira in September 2024, up from 22 trillion naira in September 2023. Governments have been borrowing from the commercial banks to finance its deficit since it could no longer access ways and means from the Central Bank of Nigeria. But the money being borrowed from the commercial banks are printed money. They are coming from thin air. Now, Don't take my word for it. I'm going to show you here. There's what we call the cash reserve ratio. This is one of the parameters the CBN is using to manage money supply and control the activities of the commercial banks. It's currently 50%, you can see, November 2024. Now, what this means is that if I deposit 1,000 naira in my bank account, let's say I'm using Zenith Bank, Zenith Bank must take 500 naira for my money, 50%, and keep it with CBN. The remaining 50%, which is 500 naira, they can now loan it out. So let's say they loan the 500 naira to Bashir. Bashir gets a credit alert in his bank account that he has 500 naira. His loan has been approved. Now he takes the 500 naira, goes out to buy milk from Emeka. Emeka collects the 500 naira because he has just made an income of 500 naira. He made a deposit of 500 naira in his bank account. Again, because another deposit has just taken place, Zenith Bank, by law, needs to make 250 naira, which is 50% of the money, deposit with the central bank. Then the remaining 250 naira is can also be given out in a loan. So let's say they loan it out here. Now, let's see what has happened to the M3 money supply in this illustration. My 1,000 naira came from my physical currency, and it's deposited in my bank account. So the M3 remains the same. Nothing has changed here. But the loan given out to Bashir came from thin air. Now, it didn't come from my 1,000 naira. It's going to be a mistake if you think his 500 naira was taken from my 1,000 naira and was given to him as a loan, because I still have control over my 1,000 naira and I can spend it. It's still in my bank account as credit, and I can spend it at any time. But his own 500 naira came from thin air. Now, Emeka that deposited 500 naira, his balance in his account is also 500 naira and he can spend it at any time. But another loan of 250 naira has been created, which came from thin air. So in total, the loan created, which is 750 naira, came from thin air. So the commercial banks can create loan from thin air and use it to buy government debts. They can buy federal government bond, treasury bills, and this is how this is rising. So government turned from one money printer to another to borrow money to finance their deficit, and that's why this keeps growing. Now, as I said earlier, every time you expand the money supply in the economy faster than the level of productivity in your economy, inflation appears and currency debasement or devaluation reigns. This is exactly what you can see in this chart. This chart shows how the currency around the world have been depreciating from year 2000 to the current time. Japanese yen has lost 50%, US dollar has lost 78% of its value, and you can see Naira. Naira has lost 99% of its value over these 25 years. Now, will things get better in 2025? Will inflation rates come down to 15% as the president is projecting? I would like to answer that with the breakdown of 2025 budget. Let's look at it together. Now, the federal government is planning to spend 50 trillion naira next year, out of which about 36 trillion naira will be their revenue. Now, this revenue is based on the estimate that they would eat like up to 2.06 million barrels per day. That's quite ambitious because in the last 5 to 6 years, Nigeria has not produced up to that in crude oil. Now, so there's possibility of this 36 trillion for them not to be able to meet it. But let's hope that they are able to meet this revenue. Now, what is left is called the deficit. You are planning to spend 50 trillion naira. Your income is just 36 trillion naira. What is left is called deficit. Wale Edun, the current Minister of Finance, has said that most of this deficits, the money for these deficits will be borrowed, and substantial amount of it will come from the commercial banks as previous. And once that happens, as we've been discussing, the M3 money supply will continue to grow. And as it does, as it grows, the inflation will probably grow too. And Naira will not be scarce in 2025. Please leave your comments below on this in the comment section below. Let's move to the second reason why you must hold gold and Bitcoin in your portfolio. Second reason is decentralization. Now, because there's no centralized authority controlling the supply of gold and Bitcoin, then that means it's decentralized. At this point, if you're enjoying this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Gold supply is controlled by market forces, which is demand and supply. That means that if 1 ounce of gold is going for example, $2,500, everybody that wants to have gold, including governments, would either have to buy gold at $2,500, $2,600, or go and mine gold. Now, if it costs more for you to mine gold than how much you're going to sell it, you'll probably leave the gold on the ground, underground, because it's not profitable for you to mine the gold until the price of gold goes up. Then the supply increases. And when people start digging deeper to get more gold, more supply hits the market, the price comes down, and it becomes unprofitable for some people to continue mining gold. To know that most of the gold harvested since the history of human being has remained in existence or in circulation up till now. So gold is indestructible to a large extent. It's only you can remold it, reshape it, use it for gold plating. It exists in one form or the other. And so the supply grows by less than 2% in a year, because again, the price is good, people drill deeper, dig deeper, and the price is not good, people just leave it underneath the earth. All right, so what you notice here is that gold has the price has consistently been growing since 1971, when Bretton Woods agreement broke down. So you can notice, I think the first major move was from around $42 to around $600 in 1980. And it has also, of course, there was many decades in which the price was just flat. Then around 2002, 2004, gold ETF was approved in the US, and that led to another bull run. This time from around $500, less than $500, to 1,800. That's more than 3x. Then the current bull run started sometime around 2019. That's when many central banks around the world started accumulating gold again. China, Russia, as if they know what was coming, which was COVID. But what do I know? All right, so that's gold. However, gold has two major drawbacks. One is that it's not easily divisible. Number two is that it's cumbersome to carry around. Now, the first one, divisibility, means that, let's say I have a gold bar that's worth how much? For example, $10,000, and I want to buy a coffee of just $1, and I want to pay with my gold. I would have to chisel out $1 worth of gold. So in those days, several hundreds of years ago, when gold was being used as medium of exchange, this was the challenge then. And the second challenge is the fact that it's cumbersome. That means that let's say you have $1 billion worth of gold that you um that is where you have kept your wealth, and for one reason or the other you want to move from a country to another. Imagine how you would have to transport the gold. And let's say you are part of the opposition in your country and you want to move, you want to flee. God help you. How are you going to move such an amount of gold without people noticing you? And even criminals can easily, you can easily become targets for criminals. So these are the two drawbacks of gold. But these were solved by the advent, the invention of Bitcoin. Um, if, so even Jerome Powell, in a recent interview, referred to Bitcoin as being a competition to gold than US dollars. So many people see Bitcoin as gold 2.0, as digital gold, because like gold, there's no centralized authority controlling the supply of Bitcoin. In fact, it is hard coded. 21 million Bitcoin is the maximum supply of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is code. And once that 21 million is reached, the current Bitcoin circulation is about 19.5 million Bitcoin. That's all we have in circulation currently. So once the maximum supply of 21 million is reached, it stops. So unlike gold that you can dig deeper to mine, for Bitcoin, that's the end. Now, how does new Bitcoin come into circulation? New Bitcoin come into circulation when people process transaction on Bitcoin network. Now, Bitcoin network is being secured by people like you and I with supercomputers now. In those days, to mine Bitcoin about 10, 15 years ago, you just need your computer. But now, the competition, because your computer would have to compete with other computers connected to Bitcoin network to earn the right to process a block of transaction. So if your computer is able to solve the um, mathematical puzzle ahead of other computers, then your computer will earn the right to process the block of transaction. And once you successfully process the block of transaction, you are rewarded with a new Bitcoin, which is 3.06 Bitcoin currently. That's the reward of every miner. Now, another thing happens every 4 years in Bitcoin network. Every 4 years in Bitcoin network, the reward for the miners is halved. That's what we call Bitcoin halving. It happened this year. And whenever it happens, that means that the new supply of Bitcoin coming into existence reduces. And if the demand for Bitcoin remains the same, what do you think will happen? Of course, the price will go up. And every time this happened, it always marked the beginning of bull run. So this happened in 2016. Then you can see the bull run that followed. It happened in 2020. You can see the bull run that followed. It happened this year. And you can see the price going up. And earlier this year too, an ETF was also approved for Bitcoin. So every challenge that um, gold has is solved in Bitcoin. It's infinitely divisible. One Bitcoin has 100 million satoshis in it. That means that you can buy 10 naira worth of Bitcoin. You can buy 100 naira worth of Bitcoin, and it's digital. And so the way you store $1 billion worth of Bitcoin is the way you store 10 naira worth of Bitcoin in your wallet. It's digital, so you can easily carry it around. All you need is internet. This year, 2024, has witnessed a major spike in the rate of adoption of Bitcoin, with companies like MicroStrategy's, Semla, and MetaPlanet in Japan adding this um, cryptocurrency to their balance sheets. In fact, recently, a pro Bitcoin senator in the USA proposed a bill that will allow the government to include Bitcoin in their national treasury. So all these underscore the fact that Bitcoin adoption is growing, and its price volatility in future will definitely reduce with time. So as I wrap up this video, I want to know which of these assets you currently own and which you plan to include in your portfolio in the new year. Please leave your comments below. If you find this video helpful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.